Paul, why don't we just start out with the MVP? And I know that everybody has different feelings about the MVP. And a lot of fans get upset about the MVP because I think many times it's just considered a quarterback award. And usually that's how I consider it too. But I'll tell you, this year, I definitely, with 3 weeks to go, I'm going to give strong consideration to both Jonathan Taylor and Cooper Kupp. Now, Jonathan Taylor has got almost a 500-yard lead in the rushing race. He has taken over from Carson Wentz as clearly the go-to guy in the Indianapolis offense. The Colts are one of the hottest teams in football. He is in it. I think Aaron Rodgers is very much in it. How can you be more valuable to a team than Rodgers has been to the Packers? I think Tom Brady is in it, even though he had such a shaky game the other day and the Bucs looked awful against New Orleans. But I'll tell you, Paul, I think we really have to start considering Cooper Kupp. He leads in this aerial show that is the NFL in this modern age. He has 20 more receptions than any player in football. He's got 290 more receiving yards than any player in football and 3 more touchdown catches than anybody in football. So those would be the 4 that would be at the top of my list right now. Give me yours.
Well, I'll follow up on your Cooper Kupp thoughts there, Peter, and say that he is my strong second. He's my strong runner-up. And you pointed out the numbers. The numbers alone, Peter, and you throw in what he's done individually with how they've won. I mean, it's just phenomenal. But when you dial it down even more, that 3-game losing streak they had in November, I mean, they clearly got together and said, okay, something's got to change here because teams have changed the way they've defended us, or at least our production has gone way down. Cooper Kupp in this 3-game winning streak, he has 30 catches. I mean, he has way into double-digit targets every single game. So he is the furthest thing from a secret. He's not catching anybody by surprise. And 2 things really stand out to me when I watch him play right now. His numbers, yes, but it's the way he's getting those numbers. They're not 50-50 balls thrown up to him, although he can do that pretty well. They're not the little shotgun catch and flick it out wide and, he picks up 3 or 4 yards. He is getting open with every single type of intermediate route against every single type of coverage. And that to me says just, wow, here's a receiver who's mastered his craft and a coaching staff who has designed everything around that skill. In addition to Matthew Stafford throwing the ball, he is finding a way to get open with a wide range of moves and a wide range of routes when everybody knows the ball is going to him. There are giant numbers everywhere in the passing game, tight ends, quarterbacks, receivers, but the way he's getting it done with those kind of routes at crunch time, to me, make him not only the best receiver, but the closest guy to who I believe is the MVP.
Okay, so Paul, I watched the Seahawks-Rams game on Tuesday evening, and what was so interesting about the game is that, the Rams were down players. Everybody's down players now, but the Rams were down some significant players. And you don't yet have that chemistry between Matthew Stafford and Odell Beckham that I'm sure you're going to have as the weeks go on. Everybody at SoFi, everybody knew that the ball was going to Cooper Kupp. Everybody. And what happens? He still is over 100 yards. And at the end of the game, all you see is Cooper Kupp making plays. And again, against a depleted Seattle secondary, but still, everybody's got problems at this time of year. I am just wowed by everybody in the ballpark knowing you're going to Cooper Kupp. And, and there's nothing the Seahawks can do about it. Conversely, on Monday night, Justin Jefferson, in my opinion, was not targeted nearly enough. And all the replays that ESPN would show, there's a reason why. He was blanketed by the Bears, but Cooper Kupp found ways to get open, and you could tell he is so trusted by Matthew Stafford. I think it's a marvel watching him play.
Yeah, he has a wonderful sense in the first part of his route, Peter. And I don't know what at the combine can measure this. Maybe short area quickness, it's a little bit of speed.
Yeah.
But no matter what route he's running, he has a wonderful way of setting up someone covering him in man, or whether he's being covered in zone, the 10 yards or the 15 yards, 18 yards, whatever it is, before he makes that cut and expects the ball. He sets up his defender and kind of explodes out of that break with that sense of when it's time, as well as anyone. And I wish I had the exact words or the exact drill that could measure that skill. But right. He has it. He sets him up, and he has an awareness of that moment he's open and how to make himself even just that little bit more open when it matters most.
You know, this is a fantastic talk show topic to discuss, because I still might vote for a quarterback, Paul, because I think quarterbacks are so incredibly dominant and they're so important. Because, look, Matthew Stafford was my preseason pick, and he's going to end up with ridiculous numbers. And he has really been a huge difference in this team. But I think right now on that team, I'd lean toward Cooper Kupp. But we'll have time to wrangle about that. We should probably talk about that a little bit more between now and the end of the season, our next few pods. Let's move on to the logjam in the AFC. I think it's absolutely, I just think it's so interesting when you look at what is happening in the AFC, and you have 10 teams that have right now 7 or 8 wins. And when you look at sort of the really important factors in what is going to determine who's going to make it, I think we all have feelings right now. And I'll go over this, Paul, and please, if you disagree with what I'm about to say or what I'm going to say, I want you to interrupt me because I'm going to we have not discussed this previously, but it's something that I kind of feel strongly about. Okay, number one, I think we all feel like when you look at the 4 division winners, right? The 4 division winners take up 4 of the 7 spots in the playoffs. And then the next 3 teams, I think we all feel probably going into the last 3 weeks that Indianapolis and the Chargers are playing so well right now that my feeling is they probably both are going to make it. They're both going to make if they don't, indeed, if Indianapolis doesn't catch Tennessee. But the way I see it right now, you've got the 4 division winners, and then assuming Tennessee wins the South and Kansas City wins the West, I think we like Indianapolis and the Chargers. Are you in agreement with that?
I would like to. I was going to use my license to interrupt you there, Peter.
Yeah.
Hopefully to disagree, but I was going to use it to jump in and say I had written down outside of Kansas City, the top 2 teams I think to make noise in January are Indianapolis and the LA Chargers. I believe in them more than the teams that are ahead of them, some other division leaders. But I'm right there with you. I think that the Chargers, with their potential explosiveness on offense and just the entire thing in Indianapolis, the run game, the quarterback, the defense, those are my 2 teams as well.
All right. So, we talk about all the teams, the 10 teams with 7 or 8 wins. I'm going to eliminate a couple of them right off the bat. Okay. I'm going to eliminate a second team in the AFC North, because my feeling right now is they play each other so much in the last 3 weeks that they're going to knock each other off. If you look at each team's schedule, I think you've got Pittsburgh, which is at Kansas City this week. Their other 2 games the rest of the way are division games. You look at Cincinnati, they also have Kansas City. They also have 2 division games other than that. Baltimore, 2 division games, and the Rams at home. And then obviously Cleveland, 2 division games, and then at Green Bay. Everybody in the AFC North the rest of the way has either a killer schedule or they're going to knock each other off. That's why I say that, to me, there's probably only one team in the AFC North that's going to make it, and that's the champion. But I'll tell you why I think this is such an important game this week for the Buffalo Bills. And that is, if you look at the chief tiebreaker that will decide who's going to make these wild card spots in the AFC, the Bills' conference record is 5-5. And, look at the other teams that they're going up against. Okay. The other teams that they're competing against for spots: Indianapolis 7-3, Chargers 5-4, Pittsburgh 5-4, Vegas 5-4. So you've got a lot of teams that are going to be right in the thick of challenging. And obviously some of those are going to be head to head. I mean, obviously if they were to tie with a team they've played during the season, then that's going to be the first tiebreaker. But I think generally, Paul, when I look at the way this goes, Buffalo, it's an important game for Buffalo anyway, just for their own psyche, at New England, 1 p.m. Eastern on Sunday. Game of the weekend, in my opinion, in the NFL. So that's really, really important. But as important is simply their playoff lives. If they lose this game to go to 5-6, the best that they can finish, and I'm sure they will finish because their other conference game remaining is with the Jets. The best that they would be able to finish really is 10-7 if they lose to the Patriots, and 6-6 in the conference. And I have a feeling there are going to be, I don't know how many, but I think there's going to be more than one team at 10-7 fighting for that 7th playoff spot.
And I think also, Peter, to add on to the concerns that you raise about Buffalo, 3 things really come to mind with the Bills, thinking about not only this game, the fun one to watch coming up against New England, but the rest of the way for the regular season and however long they make it in January, and who knows, maybe even February. They have 3 giant concerns I have a hard time getting past. And I know they've had a really good season, win-loss total. And I know they're looking pretty good seeding-wise if they win against New England. But they will still have, number one, I think pretty big questions on defense. The defense has been inconsistent. You can also probably think of more of stronger words to describe how they've struggled at times. You have an offensive line that's been a lot of times a real issue as well. And their commitment to the running game in terms of the number, the volume of carries, they'll get their backs. And I know Singletary had over 20 this last week. I loved it. It was great. I think it helped Josh Allen a lot. But defense, O-line, commitment to run game, this time of year, I know Josh Allen's wonderful. Like, I'll tune into any game to watch how he's playing all 4 quarters because he's that good. But they have major, major questions in 3 other areas that no matter what happens this weekend, Peter, I have concerns outside of their win-loss total, outside of their seeding, of how long they can really be around in January.
And the other thing is, Paul, if you lose, hey, look, the Bucs convinced everybody last year that they can win on the road. They'll be just fine, because they won throughout the playoffs on the road and then went and played at home. Now, I'd say that has a little bit of an asterisk on it because, of the lack of real home field advantage in the postseason for the most part. But if Buffalo loses the ability to play any games at home, to me, that also has an impact on what happens with them. And you know what? Again, we're not going to get political. We're not going to go all Fox News in here. But the fact is that an unvaccinated player who tested positive for COVID, Cole Beasley, and I would say he's become more famous for his COVID stance than for being last year a borderline all-pro wide receiver. He was all-pro on my ballot, which I took a lot of guff for, but I thought he was, for slot receivers last year, the best in the league. But he'll be missing now because he has tested positive. An unvaccinated player has to be out at least 10 days. So assuming that he comes back and tests negative, he'll be able to play the last 2 games of the year. But again, last 2 games of the year, are at home against the Falcons and the Jets. So I'm not too worried about those. This is the game that I'm worried about. That loss is really going to hurt Buffalo. So that, to me, look, I will be mesmerized by that football game this weekend. I know I have to monitor all of them, but I'll be watching every play of that game. Paul, let's just go in very quickly to three other quick little bullet points about this weekend and about where teams stand. Let's start. Let's each have a little comment about Tampa Bay. And that, in my opinion, there is no team that is really on the precipice now of being too beat up. I mean, if they start to get hit with COVID, they are really in trouble, because Chris Godwin, who had 32 targets in the game before he tore his ACL over a 2-game period, 32 targets over a 2-game period before he tore his ACL Sunday night against New Orleans, his loss is gigantic. And again, I'm not a big fan of Bruce Arians going back on his word and bringing Antonio Brown back onto the team. But at the end of the day, Bruce Arians is doing everything he can to try to help his team win. I'm not justifying it at all. But I'll tell you, with Leonard Fournette dinged, with Mike Evans dinged, it's almost like Antonio Brown, whenever he does play, is going to step in as an absolutely crucial piece to this puzzle.
I think that this Buccaneers team, this offense specifically, Peter, right now, you have to, all these weeks into the season, this is the one team, the one side of the ball in the NFL, you really have to hit Control Alt Delete on the entire thing and what you think about what they can do coming up in these next few weeks. I mean, just 10 days ago, the first half, I think in particular that second quarter against Buffalo at home, they were rolling. And I was sitting there watching, I'm like, this is the Buccaneers team. They're hitting the gas. They had that next gear. We knew they had the entire season. Now they're going to show up the rest of the way. Well, back then and compared to now, they're without Fournette in the run game. And don't forget the passing game. He was catching a lot of balls as well. They're without Godwin. Who knows what's going to happen with Evans? I mean, and then you have Gronk. Those are the four ways they led that offense. Three of them are probably gone now the rest of the way. And Gronk is only at his best when he's a supplement to somebody else in the pass game or the run game at this point. So it's an amazing 180 they've been forced to do there with the offense and the weapons and the way they dictate to a defense. And they can't do that now. And my eyes are going to be glued to them to see if they can respond and produce the kind of results, win-loss, that they're expecting without the major parts of their pass game besides Tom.
A couple of points about last night's games as we record this on Wednesday morning, December 22. There were two games obviously rescheduled because of COVID. Let's start in Philadelphia, Paul, where to me, I marvel at Nick Sirianni turning the Philadelphia Eagles into such a strong and basically right now at this moment fairly unstoppable running team against a formidable front in Washington. 41 rushes, 238 yards. They now have run the ball for 175 yards or more six times now. And I just look at the Philadelphia Eagles and I say, this is probably one of those teams. Right now, they are the 8th seed at 7-7, and they're basically right in a chunk with Minnesota and New Orleans. And I'll tell you, everybody says, "Oh, you don't want to play them," but Philadelphia is such an interesting team right now. How do you look at them?
I think I'd like to ramp it up a notch with the Eagles. And I think the popular thing to say about them right now and recognizing how much better they're playing and how unique their offensive style is to say they're going to be a tough out in the playoffs. You don't want to see them. I mean, someone's going to have a hard time with them. I could see them winning a game in January, Peter. Like, I think it's that different. I mean, Jalen Hurts running the ball, their commitment to the running backs, defense getting better. I could easily see them upsetting somebody in January. Now, I'm not going to say they'll be around too much longer in the playoffs, but this is a team that's doing something really different on offense, and they're doing it really well. They appear to be peaking, and watch out. not just a tough out, but a team that could really win one in January.
I want to say one thing about Washington. I talked to Ron Rivera, the head coach, on Sunday, and I said, Ron, you may have to play with a quarterback who would play in this game without having one serious regular practice with a team, and who has not been in this offense for 3 years. They picked him up off the Patriots practice squad. Garrett Gilbert, I'm talking about. And I look up at one point in the fourth quarter on Tuesday night, and Washington is 3 points behind Philadelphia at Philadelphia. And they can't stop the Eagles, but somehow, some way, they're that close. Even though they ended up losing by 10, I got to tell you, my hat's off to Rivera and to Washington, not to their run defense, but about everybody else. And look, Garrett Gilbert didn't play great in this game, but, imagine just walking into a team. And last night was the first time he had played full speed in a football game with this team ever. So I've got a lot more applause for Washington than most teams in week 15.
Completely with you. And I think for all these teams where the season doesn't appear to be going where the fans and the coaches, players want it to be, you kind of step back and you look at how are they playing? How are they competing? How are they dealing with the really difficult circumstances they have? And you connect that to the coach. And I'm with you on Ron Rivera. I think he's done a heck of a job there. I'm not around that team, but I know from watching them, they wouldn't be competing the way they are and hanging around the playoff race with the cards they've been dealt if they didn't think a lot of Ron Rivera. So that's my read on what they're doing there.
Interesting thing now, when you look at Philadelphia, and you look at their schedule, the Giants at home, at Washington, and then Dallas at home. I think they've got a better chance to be the 7th seed than either Minnesota or New Orleans, but we'll see. The other game, the Rams hosting and beating the Seahawks. So many topics out of this game, but I think the two that interest me the most are, what's the future now of Russell Wilson? I saw one analytics service after the game say the Seahawks have a 0.1% chance of now making the playoffs. The best they could be is 8-9. And the worst thing for them is they're 2-7 in the conference. The Detroit Lions are 2-7 in the conference. So it's a grim year, and you just wonder what the future holds for Russell Wilson. I think it's definitely possible that he's playing his last year in Seattle. And I've heard a lot of people, Paul, say that he has not played well and he has not had a great year at all. And what that could do to his value in trade. I'll tell you this. I would trade 3-1s for Russell Wilson in a heartbeat. And I don't know what you see when you watch him or whether it really affects what you think of him long-term. Give me your thoughts.
It's interesting there. 3-1s is a heavy price. And we've talked about it quite a bit, the way GMs are willing to wheel and deal and think about and deal their ones now. Maybe somebody would give up 3s. It'll be a great story in the offseason. The headline for me with Seattle after that game last night, Peter, is the one losing season. They're guaranteed their first losing season. It's amazing since Russell Wilson's been there. That's significant. So pick out any franchise, Peter. One that struggled, Jets, Jaguars, one that's really achieved. Patriots, all the other ones up there. You label them worst season in a decade. That's significant. That has some teeth, and that leads to changes. So I'd be shocked if Russell Wilson and Pete Carroll are back after the worst season in a decade. I'm not saying they both should be gone. If they could find a way to keep those guys happy and together, hey, it's been a hell of a formula. It's worked extremely well. But when you have your worst season in 10 years, major things usually change, like quarterback and head coach. And it feels like we're headed down that road with Seattle.
I think so. I think at least one of them will change, and maybe both. We'll see. But I do feel sad about that a little bit. I really love I love what John Schneider has built there,
Yeah.
along with Pete Carroll. I really do. They have been absolutely tremendous over a long period of time. And part of you says, hey, look, one losing season, that should not condemn Pete Carroll to getting fired. And I understand that. I totally get it. The question is, you are on the precipice of maybe making major changes on your team. If you decide not to make major changes on your team, I would understand why, because you've been in the playoffs almost every year, and you could either say, it's just a bad year, or do you want your 70-year-old coach and a quarterback who maybe won't say it publicly, but a quarterback who certainly has expressed some problems with what's going on in the organization? You really have to ask yourself, do you want to head into the future like this? And I think that is something that they are definitely going to have to ask themselves down the stretch. The last thing before we get to our Paul Burmeister going down memory lane for us and telling us a story that I don't even know. But before we do that, I just want to talk a little bit about the games of this weekend, because I think it's an absolutely fascinating weekend, that the likes of which, I mean, this is the key weekend to determining what happens in the playoffs this year. And I'll give you, we both think that, the Patriots and the Bills is an absolutely huge game. All right. So let's take that one off the table. I want to pick one other game that really kind of fascinates me as having huge impact on the playoff race going forward. Okay. And I'll tell you, it's a little bit unexpected, but to me, the other game that I'm really looking forward to spying on some this weekend is Indianapolis and Arizona.
Yep.
Paul, Arizona, they've lost three. They're 3-4 in their last 7 games after starting 7-0. And I think normally you would say, well, they're going to be okay. Kyler Murray's going to be all right and all that. But I'd be worried a little bit about what you have seen, particularly what you have seen in this defense recently. And so I think I would be a little bit concerned about that. But that's the game I'm really interested in down the stretch, in week 16. Give me yours.
Before I give you mine, I'll go one more there with Arizona, not only against Indianapolis, but they play the Cowboys the next week. And all the issues Arizona has had and all the legitimate reasons we have to question, are they going to be at their best in the postseason? They could make it all go away if they beat the Colts and the Cowboys in back-to-back weeks. If they pull that off, people aren't going to be talking about this really difficult stretch they've had. Game I'm looking at this weekend, you brought up the AFC North a little bit, but Baltimore and Cincinnati is going to be an outstanding game. I believe it's an early kick, just like Buffalo and New England, so it may not get quite as much attention, but there's not a team in the AFC North with a losing record. And I believe in Cincinnati. A month ago, I would have said Baltimore's the team. They're always going to find a way to get it done. They have Lamar. Things have changed there. Everything has felt so arduous for them this season. It's easy to believe in their history and in their fight, but I'm going to go with Cincinnati. I put them kind of right after Indianapolis and LA Chargers with AFC teams that can really make a push against Kansas City or maybe New England down the road here in the next month. But I'm hanging my hat on the Bengals there, and I look for a big win out of them against the Ravens.
I'll tell you what's really weird about the AFC North. Really, really weird. I think the best team right now by just a smidge is Cincinnati. But I would just tell you right now that I watched a lot of that Cleveland-Cincinnati game several weeks ago, and I thought it was one of the most surprising games of this season, because for the Browns to go to Cincinnati and to win by 25 points against what I thought at that moment, even after the Bengals lost to the Jets, I thought that was the best team in the AFC North. And, now I honestly could see a lot of different things happening in this division. The tough thing for teams to overcome right now is the schedule. And it is so bizarre how it falls in the last 3 weeks. Cincinnati has to play Kansas City. Baltimore has to play the Rams. Pittsburgh has to play Kansas City. Cleveland has to play Green Bay. So I think it's just, we're going to go to week 18. And I'll tell you right now, I would bet a lot of money that game 272, the final game of this season, Sunday night on NBC, is going to be one of the AFC North games. I've got to think that a game for the division championship in the last game of the season, if indeed that's how it falls, the last week of the season, Cincinnati at Cleveland. Like I said, Cleveland beat them by 25 just a month ago, and Pittsburgh at Baltimore. And so these are both just really, really fun. It's fun to think of the prospects of that. And just imagine before the season, if we did this podcast and I said, hey, Paul, what would be the odds that the Cincinnati Cleveland game would be game 272 in the NFL this year? How crazy is that, really? Anyway.
And maybe even a better one than Pittsburgh-Baltimore, which has a wonderful past on Sunday Night Football. But either one of those two games would be an awesome watch that last Sunday night.
Yeah. Hey, Paul, before we get to Zachary Levi and Kurt Warner, Levi plays Warner in the new film American Underdog, which is in theaters on Christmas Day. You have a very interesting story and a very interesting past with Kurt Warner. And I'm going to give you the floor. I'm dying to hear this story.
Well, Kurt and I were both in the class of 1989, the high school graduating class of 89. We both grew up in Eastern Iowa. I went to Iowa City West High School. He went to Cedar Rapids Regis High School, which is no longer in existence. Also where Zach Johnson went to high school as well. But our high schools were about 20 minutes apart. And I grew up playing basketball and baseball against Kurt, and always looked forward to it because he was the best player on the field on the other side in those two sports. And we would go at it in those two sports. I mean, we even got into a shoving match in a basketball game once in like 8th or 9th grade. Somewhere in my parents' basement, I have a VHS tape. I'll dig it up some off season just for laughs. But Kurt and I grew up competing against each other, and football was kind of like the other sport for both of us. We were more hoops and more baseball. And as Kurt would tell the story, and I don't know if it really came down to the two of us, but Iowa was going to offer one quarterback from the state of Iowa in the class of 89, and Hayden Fry picked me. And, Kurt obviously went on to play at Northern Iowa and on to the Hall of Fame. And I went on to a decent career and a cup of coffee in the NFL. So it's easy to say that Hayden made the wrong choice. And Kurt and I always had that connection, Peter, but we were never around each other a lot for about 20 years. And through my work at NFL Network, and as he got off the playing field, we started working together. And he would always needle me, whether it was with a text or we got into a room. Hey, there's the guy who took my scholarship. And the first couple of times, I just thought it was a funny anecdote, but I started to realize he's still a little bit pissed that happened all the way back in 1989. It still gets to him. And I've said to him a couple of times, I'm like, Kurt, Super Bowl, Hall of Fame later, like it's all worked out for you. Like I'm the guy on the other side, actually, in this story. But I have really enjoyed the last 10 years getting to know him, not just the connection and him as a competitor, but I think it was 2010, we called the Arena Football League championship in Spokane, Washington. And we both had to get somewhere right away after the game. We got on this private plane and we flew somewhere, I forget, but it was just the two of us on a plane for quite a while. And it was so much fun to just go through the stories and talk about relationships. And that kind of kickstarted about 3 or 4 years at NFL Network, where we were together a lot. I remember covering that quarterback day tour of Johnny Manziel, Teddy Bridgewater, Blake Bortles in 1 week. Kurt and I were traveling around together doing that. So we always had a really kind of fun or funny connection with our past, but now we have a pretty good relationship. And he always gets in the little jab about me taking his scholarship every time.
That is an absolutely awesome story. I just love that. I never knew. That was really, really fun. Hey, Paul Burmeister, thanks so much. I really want to wish you and yours the happiest and merriest of Christmases. And I appreciate everything you do in helping me with this podcast every week. Thank you. Merry Christmas to the Burmeisters.
Hey, I thank you for allowing me on each week. And more important right now, Merry Christmas to you. And one of the great things about getting older is perspective. And I know you have the perspective to enjoy every minute out there with your family. So Merry Christmas to you and everyone you're sharing it with out there.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.